What is some advice that you would give to aspiring esports casters?
I mean, the number one thing is just cast. Just do things, because you get a lot of people being like, I want to be an esports caster, but I don't know how to get into it. And the unfortunate thing is, like, if you're asking that question, like, how do I get into it? That's not a good sign for your casting career, because anyone who truly wants to get into it is just going to do it. They're not going to worry about exposure. They're not going to worry about, like, getting linked up with a big organization right away. Like, they're not going to think they're the best thing ever immediately. You just start making content. And if you make enough content consistently, you will improve passively, right? You're just going to get better through practicing, whether you're trying to or not. And you're also going to show to all these other organizations that you can be consistent, that you can be, like, responsible with your content. So that's kind of the thing. You just got to do it. And if you can do it consistently, and if you can show consistent improvement, people will eventually notice, even if you have to go for, like, 6 months, a year with, like, 100 views for every VOD or something like that. And most casters that are big right now started that way. Like, I just started uploading my StarCraft 2 replays to YouTube and just commentating on them. And it was very slow at first, but I just kept doing it because I enjoyed it. And I had no idea, I guess I had no plans about where it was going to go, but I just kept doing it. And that eventually led to, all this, I guess. So, yeah, just do it.
Are there any, like, pitfalls or, like, pet peeves that you wish people would avoid, or, like, most esports casters make that you would like to see kind of stop?
The biggest one I think right now in Overwatch is when someone becomes one of the newer casters becomes what I've heard referred to, I believe, by one of the Blizzard people I was talking to once, as a human kill feed. And I thought that was, like, the most perfect way to describe this issue, where when you're casting a game and there's a fight, and specifically we're talking about Overwatch here, you just start rattling off what you see on the screen. Tracer runs into the pulse bomb, gets 3 kills, there's a mercy red line. And, like, people can see that. You don't need to be the human kill feed. They can see, what's going on with that, what casters need to do in fights. And, what I try to do a lot is we do the setup before the fight happens with what's going to be important, so that during the fight, I don't have to be that human kill feed. I can just say, Reinhardt really needs to hit this huge Earth Shatter, and then when he does it, I can be like, yeah, I can't believe it, that kind of thing, and just let it play out, sort of. So it's what there needs to be more of is the good setup, and then focusing on the predetermined important moments, plus any, like, surprising hype moments that happen, rather than just, being the human kill feed, right? And I get it, like, everybody falls into that trap. I've fallen into that trap from time to time, especially people that come from League of Legends. You're very tempted to do that because you need to be more descriptive in League than you necessarily need to be in Overwatch, I think, as far as fight casting goes. So it's easy to fall into, but, like, that's something I think that, like, anyone who wants to cast Overwatch should be, like, really aware of. It's trying to avoid being the human kill feed.
The influence of the viewer base is something many casters have a hard time striking a balance between. There are players of all skill levels, so it is difficult to cater towards everyone. How do you balance your casting to make sure it's entertaining for the casual fan while making it engaging and in-depth to explain strategies that are demonstrated by the professional teams?
I think the secret to that has always been, for any esports, clarity, right? You need to be able to communicate in a way that gets complicated points across in a very easily digestible way. And that's something that I've always strived to do, right from the very beginning, because, StarCraft is a very deeply strategic game, and you need to be able to communicate in a way that is engaging to, the newer players, the more casual players, and to the more hardcore players. But, I think to a certain extent, you have to be careful to not be overly in-depth. For the truly hardcore fans, there's all sorts of analytical shows. There's all sorts of articles people are writing. You're going to have the big stat things that are going to come up eventually on, like, the League broadcasts and all that stuff, where there's going to be, like, a lot of deep stuff to digest. But in the moment, in the actual game, you're going to touch on that strategy, but you're not going to go too deep into it. Like, the deep strategy discussion is better served for outside of the game, whether that's a segment between matches where an analyst desk is breaking something down, or, like I mentioned earlier, analytical sideshows, things like that. But, in-game, you want to more, I don't want to say you want to cater to casuals, but you want to analyze without getting, too overly deep with it. It's hard to talk about, really, because it's such a hard balance to strike, because you do want to get those hardcore fans but you also want to make it very accessible. And as esports grows, the amount of people that are watching the casts are going to be largely casual players. You know, that segment of viewers that wants that deeply analytical content is going to be a lower percentage, right? I mean, so if you watch like football or something, you know, they will talk strategy, but they won't get like super in depth, like, you know, look at how this one particular running back plants his feet and then turns in a 90-degree thing and all that. Like, all that stuff is there. All the real subtle stuff is there. You don't hear a lot about it in the actual game itself. You hear a lot of that in the, you know, post-game analysis or the, you know, halftime analysis, that kind of stuff. So I think for Overwatch, you know, we can kind of move in that direction too, where there's a lot there to talk about, but you have to be very choosy about what exactly you talk about in the game.